Just over here is Willowbank Raceway, an iconic drag strip in Australian motorsport. In just a few short weeks, this venue is going to roar into life in a bombardment for the senses when it hosts the Willowbank Winter Nationals. Men and women from around Australia are going to test their engineering and driving skills, all looking to get their names into the Australian drag racing record books. The Willowbank drag strip is renowned for producing record-breaking drag times. And part of the reason for that is the air temp and air density at this time of the year. At just 180 feet above sea level, with average evening air temperatures of around about 58 degrees, the air is full of rich, horsepower-producing oxygen molecules. More oxygen molecules in the air creates a more powerful burn in your engine. Bigger bang equals bigger horsepower. So that's why those of us who are chasing a few extra horsepower from our engines are constantly looking for ways to get more cold air. Which leads us to the question, is a cold air intake the solution or just a myth? G'day everyone, I'm dedicating this entire video to cold air intakes. And why? Of all the performance mods I've talked about on this channel, there is one topic, count them, one topic which evokes the most emotion in your comments. And that is cold air intakes. So I'm going to take a closer look at cold air intakes and attempt to answer the question, myth or legend? So you never know, I might have to swallow my words and retract my previous endorsement for this E46 mod. I'm going to set a challenge for you guys. Drop me a comment below about your thoughts on cold air intakes. Are you for them or against them? And at the end of the video, let me know if you've changed your mind. I recently did a YouTube poll asking the question, do you believe cold air intakes are a good performance mod for the E46? And I'll share the results a little bit later, and you might be surprised by the outcome. But for now, let's get straight into it and have a look at the cold air intakes for your E46. To work out how to get our engine breathing more cold air, we really should consider the enemy, the hot air. Your E46 with the M54B engine is going to operate around about 200 degrees Fahrenheit. That's hot. Then there are other factors like your exhaust manifold, which will be considerably hotter. Also, the hot air flowing into your engine bay as it passes through the radiator. All that hot air swirling around is heating up other components underneath the bonnet, including the air in your intake system. But there's another heat source which you may not have previously considered, and that is air turbulence within your intake system. If the air flowing through your intake is not flowing freely, in other words, it's having to make sharp turns and it's bouncing off irregular shapes within the intake, then it's generating turbulence. And as the air molecules are colliding, the energy from this chaos is generating heat. And the final factor is the ambient air temperature. In other words, the air temperature outside the car. Have you ever thought to yourself that your E46 is running so much better early of a morning or later in the evening? Chances are it probably is, and that's because the air temperature is much cooler at these times of day than if you're driving in the middle of the day. I've read a heap of comments on E46 and BMW forums suggesting that the standard airbox and intake on the E46 is pretty much perfect. But the BMW engineers have already done all the research and spent hundreds of thousands of dollars coming up with a system which cannot possibly benefit from any further modification. So let's take a look at the standard airbox and intake for the E46, and then I'll give my opinion regarding the BMW engineer theory. This is the standard airbox and inlet system for your BMW E46. Air is drawn into the airbox from two separate locations. The first being here, where it's drawn from in front of the radiator. The second location is at a point between the left-hand headlight and the radiator. Air is drawn into the airbox and then sucked through a rectangular paper element. The air then flows through the MAF sensor and into the intake pipework before it reaches the throttle body. So there's a couple of really good positives with this system. The first being that it's all made from plastic, which is a really great material for minimizing heat absorption and heat retention. The unit itself is fully sealed, which will help to minimize the risk of water and debris being sucked into the engine. The entire system is located neatly on the left-hand side of the engine bay, well away from the exhaust manifold and all that super hot air. And the last thing is the paper element. At around about $10 Australian to replace, it's a really inexpensive maintenance item. That being said, there are also some negatives. The first being the shape of the airbox. Being a cube, it's not ideal for promoting smooth airflow. Those vertical surfaces and hard angles generate turbulence before the air has even reached the filter element. And the filter element itself, being made from paper, is not an ideal medium for promoting smooth airflow. In fact, the paper element will generate even more turbulence as the air's got to fight its way through the matted paper pulp. Also, the element can't be cleaned, and once it becomes clogged, it becomes inefficient at providing full airflow. My third concern is with the intake pipework itself. There's a section of corrugated piping just before it reaches the throttle body, and these irregular surfaces on the inside of the pipework are also going to generate even more turbulence. As the air bounces off those irregular shapes, it becomes even more turbulent. And as I stated before, turbulent air is hotter air, which is not ideal when we're chasing performance. So that's the intake system for the E46. A few positives, but also a few negatives. To give my response to those people that would suggest that the BMW engineers have got it right in designing a pretty much perfect intake for the E46. But to answer that question, let's consider the parameters that the BMW engineers would need to work to in order to produce an intake system. Firstly, I guess, it needs to work, but it needs to work in a variety of applications. Stop-start traffic, highway driving, and then wet and dusty, hot and cold environments. It also needs to meet financial considerations. The cost to mass produce the parts, the cost to install those parts on a production line assembly, the cost for service and maintenance replacement. Another factor is emissions targets. The intake needs to assist other engine components in adhering to various emission targets, and also noise levels. See if you can answer this question. What is the required air volume for the M54B engine? Drop me a comment below with what you think the answer is, and I'll work it out myself as we do so. So what have we got? Displacement 2494 times maximum RPM of 6,500. Multiply that by a factor of 3,456. Divide by volumetric efficiency, let's say 0.8 for a normally aspirated engine. Carry the 1. 229 CFM or 6,484 litres per minute at 6,500 RPM. Crikey, that's a lot of air racing through, what is it, a 4-inch intake pipe? That's certainly going to make some noise. And BMW is well aware that not all of their clients are going to appreciate that noise. So the BMW engineers are going to design a system which keeps that noise level to a minimum. As you can see, there are a lot of other factors other than performance that the BMW engineers are considering when they design the intake system. So have they met their design criteria? Well, probably yes. But have they produced a great performance intake? No, probably not. There's certainly some room for improvement. Let's now have a look at an aftermarket setup. And because I have one in the garage, we'll have a look at the cold air intake system from AFE. So this is the intake system from AFE Power. It includes a pod filter, which then attaches to the MAF via this plastic tubing, and then, utilising the existing intake pipework, connects to the throttle body. This system draws air from two locations as well. The first being at the front here, from behind the left-hand headlight. And by utilising the existing ductwork, will also draw air from in front of the radiator. The pod filter is protected by this aluminium shielding, which will help to protect it from water splashing into the engine bay and large debris. So the pros. Firstly, the pod filter itself. The pod filter is made of cotton mesh with an oiled coating. As the air flows through the cotton mesh, it doesn't generate turbulence like it does through the paper element. The oiled layer captures the dirt and dust particles and holds them away from the cotton mesh material. This then acts like a pre-filter for the next layer of dirt and dust as it's drawn in through the intake system. This means the filter material cleans the air much better while still providing full airflow through the filter. You can also clean the filter, which makes this a one-off purchase. For those of you who believe that an oiled filter is going to destroy your MAF sensor, it doesn't. If you correctly follow the cleaning and oil instructions for this filter, there is no risk of damage to the MAF sensor. In fact, K&N recently released a statement outlining that after hundreds of hours of research and testing, they found no evidence to suggest that an oiled filter is going to damage the MAF sensor in any way or alter the tuning characteristics of your engine. Another factor with the filter itself is the overall design. The shape of the filter provides a larger surface area to draw air into the intake system, once again providing better airflow through to the throttle body. Now, there are some cons. The first thing is the aluminium shielding. It would be far better off if it was made from plastic. The aluminium is going to absorb heat and retain the heat much more than plastic would. By utilising the existing corrugated pipework to the throttle body, the same problem with air turbulence in that pipework exists as it does with the standard intake. So once again, a couple of positives, but also a couple of negatives. After all that, where do we stand? Will this aftermarket intake produce more horsepower than the standard intake on your E46? It's been several days since I filmed my video, and I wanted to take a moment to review all the research and to consider all the information from looking at both intake systems. So do I still believe a cold air intake is a good performance mod for your E46? Well, first, what do you say? So here's what you had to say. With my online poll, do you believe a cold air intake is a good performance mod for the E46? 19% of you are undecided. Don't know one way or the other. 38% of you believe yes it is, which means 43% of you don't believe a cold air intake is a good performance mod. Wow, that really surprises me. I've done a heap of research to make this video. I've spent hours, literally hours, scouring the internet for information on cold air intakes. And the one thing I found is it's actually very hard to find any negative information regarding cold air intakes. In fact, most of the information is extremely positive. So where I'm confused is, despite all this positive information, almost 3/4 of you don't believe the data. And I don't understand why. If we were talking about a catback exhaust or headers or something like that, most of you, I believe, agree that they are a good performance mod. All the data supports it. But despite the fact that the data supports the positive benefits of a cold air intake, most of you aren't convinced. So leave me a comment below as to why that is. Is it from personal experience? Is it that you believe the data is flawed? Is it that you believe the systems are flawed? Post me a comment below with a good reason why you don't believe all this information. It will really help me out because I'm seriously confused. Have I changed my mind about cold air intakes for the E46? I still believe that getting more cold air into your engine is a worthwhile mod. I guess the question is, are the kits that are available capable of doing that? And I think they are, but they require some modification. Well, let's look at the AFE kit. Probably my main concern with it is the aluminium shielding. And when I looked at other kits on the market, pretty much all of them use an aluminium shielding. That shielding is probably not the most effective material at minimising heat around your new pod filter. I would apply a heat protective material to the aluminium shielding to help keep the air around the pod filter a few degrees cooler. I would also replace the intake pipework from the MAF sensor to the throttle body, and I'd replace it with a silicone boot similar to this one here from Turner Motorsport. The silicone is great for heat dissipation, in other words it's not going to absorb heat. It's more robust than the plastic, and also it has a smooth internal surface to reduce and minimise that turbulence created by the BMW intake pipework. I would also get a full tune after I'd installed the kit. So with that said, I think you would get close to the 10 horsepower performance increase that the manufacturers claim. Without it, I think you could expect a 2 to 3 horsepower increase at best without having a tune and doing those other tweaks to the system. But as a standalone kit, well, you certainly get that really cool induction noise, and you're going to save, what, $20 or $30 a year in replacement element costs. Only you can decide whether the price of the kit justifies a 3 horsepower increase, some cool induction noise, and a moderate service saving each year. So that's my thoughts on the cold air intake for the E46. I've provided as much information as I can to help you make your decision, and as I say, I'd be really interested to hear your comments as to whether after watching this video you still feel the same or whether you've changed your mind. As always, if you've enjoyed the video, you can do me a solid by clicking the like button below. It really helps me grow my channel if you do. If you'd like to see more content for your E46 BMW on maintenance, performance upgrades, and to follow the build of my supercharged E46 325 Ci, I'd strongly recommend you subscribe and tickle the bell so you get a notification each time I upload a new video. I've really enjoyed making this video and I've enjoyed your company, so until we meet again, look after yourselves, stay safe, and TTFN.